There's things that obviously I know a lot about you, but there's tons that I don't.
Whoa! At this point, there's stuff you don't know about me?
I don't know shit about anybody until I come in here and I talk to them. Like, when was the last time, besides that lunch at Sushi, where we really talked? I mean, even then we talked about business.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have our usual, Sunday brunches, but other than those...
Who are you? What makes you tick?
Oh, my God.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to One-on-One with me, Kristian Harloff. And I am doing this a little different. Normally I do it from the set with everything, too, but figured, listen, just make it easy on the production guys today. Samm Levine, a buddy of mine. You guys know him with his work in Inglourious Basterds, Freaks and Geeks, and you might know him just from being in the movie trivia Schmoedown. I have really become to be close friends with Sam. He is one of my favorite people that I have met working here in this space. And Mark Ellis and I met him during the Doug Benson Loves Movies show. We had done the show. We met Sam. And so Sam and I really talk about everything, about what it was like when he was growing up in Jersey and kind of how he got his life in school and how he didn't really get along with a lot of people back then and wanted to take off and come back to and move to LA, and his time at Freaks and Geeks. We talked about it all. It's a really fun interview, and I hope you enjoy it. What's up, everybody? Back here on One-on-One with Kristian Harloff. Thank you, everybody who's been listening and watching and commenting. And if you haven't already downloaded us on the Apple Podcast, please do that and leave a rate and review and all that special stuff. And obviously, if you're watching on the podcast channel and Collider Podcast, then please leave a comment there as well. And thank you for subscribing. I am ready to roll here with a friend.
Oh, boy.
It's fun to call you a friend now.
Oh, thanks, buddy. It is.
You were just a douche. No, I'm just kidding. You're a good guy. You've always been really nice to me. You've always been someone that I've gotten along with since the day I met you on Doug Loves Movies.
Yeah, buddy.
We hit it off, and it is the former movie trivia Schmoedown champion of the world, Samm Levine, and again, a pleasure to call you a pal, and I'm glad that you're joining me here. How you doing?
I'm good, and it is a pleasure to call you a pal right back. I remember shortly after we did Doug Loves Movies the first time, that would have been in the summer of 2011.
Yeah, wow.
You asked me out to sushi lunch, and there's no faster way to this boy's heart than sushi.
That was afterwards.
That was afterwards.
That wasn't the initial.
No,
like,
that was not the initial.
Oh,
it was like a year or so later.
Yes. Because the first thing that we had you on, you came on the old version of the Schmo show we just talked about.
Recorded in a friggin' closet.
Yeah, that one. You know where that was? That was when I was a producer over at The Bachelor.
Yeah,
and we did it in my office.
In the office on like a Saturday, right?
Something like that. Yeah, and we talked about the Tarantino stuff and everything. Then we started we did the Schmo show. What became the Schmo show? Then you became a beast at the game.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, man, this guy's probably good at trivia. And lo and behold, boy, were you ever.
I had to text you. I had to yell at you to say, you're doing movie trivia. You invite me.
I know. And I said, what I said, don't worry, you're in the plan. You're in the plan. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a ton of stuff because there's things that obviously I know a lot about you, but there's tons that I don't.
Whoa! At this point, there's stuff you don't know about me?
I don't know shit about anybody until I come in here and I talk to them. Like, when was the last time, besides that lunch at Sushi, where we really talked? I mean, even then we talked about business.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have our usual, Sunday brunches, but other than those...
Who are you? What makes you tick?
Oh, my God.
Where did you... So you grew up in Chicago, right?
No, I grew up in Jersey. Born in Chicago.
See? Didn't know this.
You knew this. You just forgot.
That's
I was
probably
born
true.
in Chicago.
Yeah.
I was raised right outside of Manhattan. The reason I wear the Cubs hat is that in Chicago, we used to go there over the summers, my family, and that's where I fell in love with baseball. My dad took me to my first game at Wrigley when I was 8, and that was that.
That was it. So you became... So you never... If you would have went to a Yankee game when you were like 6 or 7, it could be a different story.
Do you know my father claims he took me to a Mets game when I was like 4 or 5? I don't really remember it. So thank God for that. Disaster averted, right?
I'm going to give you that. Now, if you were saying the Yankees, I'd say we'd have some problems here.
Yeah.
But I like the Cubs. I've always been a Cub fan. So, you became a big baseball fan, but you lived. But so wait, how long? Just give me one more time though. How long were you in Jersey for total?
I lived in Jersey until right before I turned 17, basically.
Oh wow, you really were. You were a Jersey kid. I didn't know. I did not know that you lived there for that long.
Yeah.
So, and being a Cubs fan in Jersey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back in keeping in mind, we're talking mostly the late 80s, early 90s.
No, Steve Sachs days.
Yeah, it was not, but there was nothing in vogue about being a Cubs fan. They were in the fucking toilet.
Yeah, well, both teams were.
Yeah.
Late 80s as the Steve Sachs years for the
For
Yanks.
the Yanks. So
Rick wrote it.
there wasn't much to write home about. So it wasn't like I got in trouble being a Cubs fan.
Right.
It was like.
But when do you get, so 17 years old, so you go through high school, majority of high school there. What's high school like? Do you like it?
No,
like
I hated it.
Okay.
I hated high school. I hated all my school years. Not that I, minded learning or anything. I didn't like the format. And then beyond that, big surprise here.
Yeah.
Not very popular.
That is surprising to me, actually.
Really?
Only because I'll tell you why. Because when you look at, I guess, as I look at, this is the Samm Levine that I know.
Yeah.
I know the confident Samm Levine, the funny Samm Levine, the guy that probably grew into himself later on. But then when you go back to Freaks and Geeks and stuff too, I can see the version of you that I know and stuff too. Yeah. But that was you in high school, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that guy did not have a whole lot of actual friends. I had a lot of, well-wishers.
Yeah.
Or not well-wishers. I had a lot of people who didn't care one way or the other. That probably was most people. They could have done with me, could have done without me. Yeah. Turns out now that Facebook is a thing, and has been for a while, and what with my career that occasionally has me on television, turns out I had a shit ton of best friends.
Right.
That I had no idea.
Right.
I had no idea we were so close. In high school. Thank you so much for inviting me over to those parties you threw. Literally never.
Hey, pal, remember that time I said, hey, buddy, in the hallway?
Yeah, I do. I'll never forget it. But that's my sick joy of why I will accept any friend request of someone I actually went to school with, is because they say the best revenge is living well, and I want to make sure they have a front row seat.
I understand. Were you angry in high school?
No, I wasn't angry. I realized like I wasn't clicking with many people. I had so few friends.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I had this like epiphany, and I was like, what am I getting bent out of shape? This is 4 years.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
You knew you would be out of there sooner or later.
I was like, I'm not going to put any more importance on any of the stuff that goes on between me and these people and what happens here than is necessary, and I think very little is.
So were you more concentrated then on school or acting at that point?
Yeah, at that time, by the time I was finishing up middle school is when I started my professional career.
Oh, wow.
And I never talked about it at school. The only overlap there might have been was I was doing a lot of stand-up comedy.
At how old?
When I started when I was 12.
This I remember.
Yeah.
This we've talked about, yes.
Yeah, and so I was doing first bar mitzvahs and then clubs.
Which I definitely could see.
Yeah.
I want to go back in time and watch one of your sets.
And so
I would love to.
They were not good.
I bet you they were still...
They were fun for what they were.
For what they were.
And so the only time I never talked about it because dark secret, sometimes I wouldn't be able to get on stage until kind of late. Like they wouldn't let me go until the late show, like 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And my parents would let me do it.
But you're with your parents, obviously.
I was with my mother usually most of the time. And so I'd go in, I'd do my set, we'd drive back to Jersey, not a far drive for where we lived, but like I wasn't getting home till like midnight or whatever.
Right.
So I'd get like 6 hours sleep or whatever, and she'd be like, "I'm not gonna make you go to school like this." So I would just like sleep in a little bit and then do like a half day.
Oh, wow.
At school.
Well, I see.
And I would make up my assignments.
Yeah. Were you a pretty good student?
I was fine.
Yeah.
I was fine. And so that's a lot of half days.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of unexcused absences, but that were sort of excused. I don't know.
But you were concentrating on it before me.
I just knew my future was not going to be academia.
Yeah.
So,
or making friends.
Yeah.
Because isn't that really what high school is? It's either you concentrate, you do your studies, or you crack up your friends and you're. See that I would have guessed. Someone would have asked me. I would have guessed that you were like a class clown and you try to crack people up.
I was, but I was a class clown that so few people appreciated. I was a
feel the same way.
humor. It was there were other class clowns. There were the kids, who
Right.
who could get a laugh like that, and then I was sitting there making Monty Python references.
Right. And right over people's heads.
Way over their heads,
Right.
maybe one or two other people. Usually it was the teachers who found me funny.
Right. We get it, nerd. You're smart.
Yeah.
You're a smart, funny guy.
I was like, I'm not. I'm just doing the Black Knight, guys. That's all. It's not rocket science over here. Like, I'm sorry that you are uncultured and your parents don't care about comedy. I can't help you.
I can send you a VHS tape. But I had a pleasure of meeting your brother.
That's right. My brother Max.
Yes, at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And you guys seem very close.
We are incredibly close. We are cut from the same cloth.
Younger brother?
No, he is older.
He's older.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I thought he was the younger brother.
A lot of people think that, and I think that's funny because in addition to being my older brother, he is also much larger than I am. He's like 6'1".
He's 6'1".
He's a big boy.
Well, it's that. So let me ask you that though, because you talk about this often. Was one of the things because you joke it all the time about your height. Yeah. And so was that one of the things you get picked on at school?
I mean, I got picked on. I mean, I was tiny. I had a fast mouth.
Fights?
Very few. Okay. Very, very few fights. Usually, shoving or whatever. Right. I mean, I definitely got picked on. I was definitely the butt of a lot of jokes and mean, nastiness. But I really let it roll off my back because I don't know why. I remember one day right before I started high school, I was walking home. I was doing some summer courses, and I was walking home, and I just remember thinking, like, none of this shit matters.
Who cares?
None of this shit will matter to me. I'm not going to let it bother me at all what happens here. I have my own plan, and this is just 4 years I got to get through. It's not a big deal.
How much older is your brother?
2 years.
He's 2 years old. So was that one at the same school?
No.
Okay.
He went to a different school. He went to school in the city.
Well, that's got to be tough then, too, because you don't have a big brother there, too. It probably would have been a little easier.
I don't know. No? I don't know. He's not a tough guy. He's a big guy, but he's a softie.
That, but it's still support because you guys are close. I mean, like, again, if you're a freshman and he's a junior, and it's like you still got your junior brother there.
Yeah, but let's be honest, he wasn't cool either.
Is that why you say cut from the same cloth?
Yeah. I don't think he would have done me any good.
Was he the class clown? I think both you guys.
No, I mean he was probably making the same dumb jokes I was,
right.
That only teachers appreciated.
Did he in high school as much as you did?
Almost certainly.
Almost.
Yeah.
The Levine kids did not like
did not care for school at all.
Are you telling your parents like, guys, school sucks. We're getting out of here.
They
knew that you were just done.
They knew, yeah.
Right.
They were like, yeah, just get through it. Just
what
do
does your brother
tests. Right now, he's a retail guy. He's worked every angle of retail,
right.
From clerk to floor person to assistant manager. He worked for a very long time for the Echo Shoe Company, but now he is working at Nordstrom.
Okay,
which doesn't sound like he's not a titan of industry, but it's not easy what he's doing over there, and he's fucking crushing it.
What I'm trying to get at here is, what does it take for me to get him out here so I can actually get a Levine back in the ring?
A fucking plane ticket.
Yeah, that's all I got to do. I got to get him in the ring.
Yeah,
and he won't quit on me.
Oh, quit's the wrong word.
We'll get it. No, you step back, and we're definitely going to get to that, too.
Yeah.
But, all right, but your parents, your relationship with your parents, they're still together, your parents?
Oh, yeah.
Parents still together?
Let's see, they got married in 74, started dating in 69, I think.
Wow,
so they're coming in on 50 years.
Okay, so they're still together 50 years. Family life pretty good when you grow up?
Yeah,
just the two of you guys?
Just
two
the two
kids?
of us,
Okay.
small family.
Yeah.
I lucked out, man.
Yeah.
I got a lot of friends. Parents split up. They hate their siblings. There's strife throughout the house. I grew up in a very, very loving, stable home.
That's probably why you were able to brush off the shit that was going on in high school.
Yeah. So I'm sure that made it a lot easier.
Oh, I'm telling you, because I had a not great time in high school, and I had to rely on the humor and stuff during grammar school too. And my parents did split up, and it wasn't always great.
Yeah.
And too, so it was like there, and it weighed on it, and
of
so
course,
so everything mattered a little bit more. So I can understand you had that really strong family bond. And you get it, and you say, well, I'm just going to focus on this, especially if your mom's driving you out to stand-up comedy gigs.
Oh, my God. No, I mean, I could not possibly be doing what I'm doing now if my mother did not step up and give me the incredible support that she did when I was a kid.
Yeah,
not a chance.
So how do they recognize in their first name, especially if you have the older brother? Was he ever interested in doing the? No, never.
Nah.
Okay, so where do you discover that? Because I know your love for movies, obviously, and I know that since because you were watching, like you said, you're making Monty Python references in the 6th or 7th grade. And so where does that come from? Is that watching with your dad? Is that watching with your mom?
My father.
Yeah, okay.
My father early in my and my brother's lives, he was one of the first guys on his block in the 70s to get a VCR.
Okay.
So
he spent like the $400 on it to get it?
I think he spent $1,700 to get one. And blank tapes were like $20. You could record an hour on them.
Right.
And so he had a library of stuff he taped off TV. That, we're talking the late 80s, mid-late 80s. You can't find that stuff.
Right.
Those old TV episodes There was nowhere else to find them unless you had them on cassette.
Right.
So
there was no YouTubes.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was a big thing for him, was showing me and my brother, old 70s Saturday Night Lives and SCTV and Monty Python and movies like Stripes and
right.
and Caddyshack.
That's what I do with my kid now.
Yeah.
She watched Goonies with her the other day, watched Princess Bride, all that stuff. Yeah. Thought of you, by the way, when with the Vicinity.
Vicini.
When that, because you got that question.
That's right.
You got the question, the Sicilian question.
Never get into a land war in Asia.
Yep, and that was the one I remember. I said that's the one Samm Levine won.
I think that's the one I beat Bibbs on.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah. So I owe my first steps on that to my dad.
Is your dad a pretty funny guy?
I mean, if you ask him,
right. But it wasn't. He wasn't cracking everybody. I'm trying to find out, because you're very quick.
Yeah.
Especially for the people that you hang with, whether it's Doug Benson and Kevin Pollak, and you got to be able to hang with those guys.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, and you do that. You're very you've got that quick wit, and I'm just curious where that comes from.
Thank you. I don't. I mean, I want to say like, oh, it's because of this, and this. I just think it's the kind of comedy that's always appealed to me. Is like the the fast paced, boom, boom, boom. So it's just been something that's always I've strived for.
Yeah.
I can't pinpoint it to it started here. And like anything, and this is the advice I give to young people who want to get into show business or whatever, I'm like, comedy and writing is a muscle.
Yeah.
And the more often you do it, the stronger that muscle will get and the easier it will come.
Right.
So that's...
And surround yourself with the right people, too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you surround yourself so you're always on your toes. You have to always be upping your game.
Yeah.
And so that's, I guess it probably comes from me having to act like I belong there when I was 13, 14 years old at comedy clubs, hanging around with a bunch of 20-somethings.
Right.
And,
the intimidation factor isn't really there for you anymore.
No, definitely not. But, at the time I was like, I don't want these, 25-year-old guys who to me seemed like 100 years old,
right.
Seemed like full grown-ups to think that I was just some kid who didn't belong there.
Right. Well, I think that also comes to the thing what I've also found about you, too. I think you can be assertive in a way that's not, look, you and I have gotten into, I wouldn't say arguments, but we've gotten into
debates.
I wouldn't say heated debates.
I don't know, heated.
Not heated.
Passionate.
I like the word
debates.
passionate debates. We've gotten there before, because I think that you're the type of person who's like, well, I'm going to tell you this because this is exactly how it goes in my mind. You should be thinking about it this way. And I go, well, it's not exactly that. And we'll get there. And I think that I would be mistaken if I say that's probably the only time you do that. I could probably see you doing that with your job. Mm-hmm. I could see that probably you doing that in relationships. I could probably see you do that with friendships in general. Do you find yourself pretty assertive? And no,
I'm not.
You're not.
I'm not. Assertive's assertive is one thing. I feel like what you're getting at is opinionated, maybe.
Yeah, better that.
So
assertive with your opinions,
I guess.
Yes.
But it's. I think it comes down to when it's about opinion, I'm very open.
Okay.
If we are arguing an objective thing, if we're arguing a subjective thing, then I think it gets a little. I'll be a little more passionate about it.
Sure.
Because.
There's no right or wrong.
There is no right or wrong.
Right.
If it's subjective, this is how you feel. I can't debate how you feel.
Right.
I can say this is how I feel about it, and here's why. Right. I wish you felt this way about it. I'm sorry that you don't, but I will respect your opinion, even though I think it is wrong. If it is an objective thing, I'll be like, no, you are wrong. Here is why.
Right.
And and everything you're going to throw at me, I'm going to shoot down because there is a correct and incorrect answer here, and you're on the wrong side.
Sure.
But usually, I would say, honest to God, those arguments where you're on the right side or the wrong side of something are almost always about movie trivia or trivia-related elements. Because I do other kinds of trivia that is not just movie-related in my life. And so... for me, I almost certainly get the most passionate about games and trivia and fairness and equality and things like that. So you hear a lot more of that out of me than most other people in my life.
Well, that makes sense. And then, but when it comes to work, though, I'm sure that whether it's character choices or maybe there's certain things, there's certain directors that you can have great conversations with.
Absolutely. When it comes to work, the thing that I get heated about most is problems that could have been avoided with an ounce of forethought and energy.
Without giving specific names, and can you give me a circumstance?
Sure. If I'm working on a set and we have a really difficult scene to do, and I have told the director, listen, this is a really difficult scene we have to do, and I know this is a really difficult scene.
Emotional-wise, you're talking about?
Whatever, either emotional or whether it be physical, whatever it is, and I say, listen, how many takes do you think you're going to need? Like, how many different ways do you want to do it? And the director says, I'm going to need a minimum of 10 takes. I say, that's fine. I will prepare myself to do 10 takes and give you 10 perfect takes exactly the way you need, whatever. And then I get there, and then because I'm on point and the director is on point, some other shit goes wrong. Mm-hmm. And instead of 10 takes, now it's 35.
Wow.
That will drive me fucking crazy because the director and I had a conversation about it, and either someone who should have known about our 10 takes, approximately 10 takes, didn't, and now there's other shit that could have easily been avoided, like prop problems or photography problems or lighting problems or sound problems. These are all things that could have been solved or accounted for ahead of time and weren't, and now it's affecting the product.
Right. So then that
drives me crazy.
That's kind of where I was going with the previous questions. That you were like, in everything you do, you're a pretty professional dude.
I try to be.
You are. I mean, I think that's just kind of by your nature who you are. You want to, you see a situation, you say, like you just said, this is what we need to do. How are we going to do this?
Right.
And if it happens, you remind me of Andrew Freed, my buddy Andrew Freed. It's kind of the same way. It's just like, okay, this is what we need, and if that wasn't going to happen, you should have at least told me that's a possibility that could have happened,
so that we can prepare alternate, paths to success here. Yes, I am a very big fan of logic and reasoning.
That's also why I asked. I threw in the whole thing with relationships in general. In general, like
I'm very. I don't think if you asked any of my former girlfriends if I'm an unreasonable person, I don't think any of them would say yes.
Yeah. Okay. But I want to get back into the acting though too, because again, your mom's very supportive. Sees that this is happening. You say, school, whatever. People suck in this high school. When's the golden egg to where you said that's acting? That's what I'm going to do. That's where I'm going to go. Do you just really do it in Jersey? Yeah, hightail it. No, you're going to California. How's that all happen?
I knew I wanted to do it when I was about 12 years old. Is when I met with my first manager, a man named Sid Gold. Perfect name, right? Yeah.
Sid Gold's office.
My first manager in New York, and I only went in to meet with him as a stand-up. He was the one who said, "Do you act also?" Okay. And I was like, sure. So I read some lines for him, and then he started sending me on auditions, and right away I was like, oh, no, this feels very comfortable.
Did you like him more than stand-up?
No, at that time I liked the stand-up more.
Okay.
I was having a lot more success with stand-up. For me, success as a stand-up was getting stage time.
Right.
So
which ultimately, when you're starting comedy, that's exactly what it is.
So So that's why it was a lot easier to feel like that's where I was excelling more there, because with acting, I went on, countless auditions and had very, almost no jobs to show for them. But that's probably where I had the epiphany, was right when I was around 12, and I was like, no, this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
So I didn't have delusions of grandeur. I didn't think like, oh no, I'll be like a famous working actor, before school's done. Like, I assumed it would be something I continued to pursue on the side, with, hopefully some measure of success. But the plan was to continue my studies, graduate, and go to a school that had a good performing arts program.
Okay.
And then I would probably have majored in that, or maybe gone to a film school. So that was the plan.
Right.
The plan was changed when right before I turned 17 is when I booked Freaks and Geeks.
Right. So let's talk about that. Like, how does that come about?
That was the first pilot I ever got to audition for.
Crazy. And that's in Jersey?
In New York.
In New York. You're in the East Coast. You're in the East Coast, but they shot it out here, yes?
Yeah, we shot it in L.A., but I auditioned for it in New York. I had to fly out to L.A. to, test in front of the network. Mm-hmm. And they offered me the job, and I took the job.
Right, like that?
Within 40 minutes of the network test.
Wow. Okay, so you get this, and that's That's big. This is before Judd Apatow was Judd Apatow, right?
He was already a known quantity, but
in
not
the system.
in the system. You know, I mean, he produced Larry Sanders' show and
of course,
Ben Stiller's show,
but he wasn't the brand.
No, he was not the
Apatow.
brand
Right.
that he is today.
Right, and that didn't come until because he had like two shows that we'll talk about the whole thing, but like afterwards, I remember being at I don't remember what panel it was, but it was some screening it was Freaks and Geeks. It was and it was Apatow talking about his series and how they got canceled after the first season, and then it wasn't even right after or no, excuse me, it was right before 40-Year-Old Virgin popped.
Okay.
And that's kind of when he became the Apatow that we know today. But
Yeah.
so when you do that network test, is he there? Is he?
Oh yeah,
he's there.
He was there. Paul Feig was there.
Great.
Jay Kasdan was there.
And so do you have a rapport with 17 years old? Because you're an older. When you look at older interviews and stuff, you're an older 17.
Yeah, I did have a rapport with them because both Judd and Paul were former stand-ups. And now Judd has returned to stand-up.
Yeah, he's been doing
but
it
at
a lot,
the time he had he was out of it for a long time. So they were both stand-ups at some point in their teens.
Yeah.
So they knew that I was as well. You know, they had me doing pieces of my act to warm up the room.
Right.
Literally.
So they took to you pretty quick.
Yeah, we hit it off. It
They
was,
took
it was
you
great.
pretty quick. So that whole, I mean, what a cast in general.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when that all happens, and I'm going to jump to this right away. And if you don't want to talk about it, we can move on and we get into it because I saw it. I wanted to ask you because you were sitting on this panel a couple of years ago when this whole Busy Phillips thing happens.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about this at all? We can move.
We can talk about it. Just
You answer it however you want to answer it. I'll ask the question. You can move on to it.
Sure.
So when I saw this panel of Busy Phillips when they asked her about the Franco thing, and she started kind of laughing about it, and everybody was laughing about it on there, and she kind of gave her spiel of what happened, and then she's going to sell her book recently, and then kind of recounts what happened, but it seemed a lot more serious this time around when she did it. I just want to ask what the kind of mood was back then. Afterwards, was it more like, oh, that came up awkwardly, or she actually wanted to? She didn't want to bring it up at all. She just kind of performed that to make it like it was cool, but it bothered her.
At the time,
Yes.
when it happened, it was pretty intense.
The actual incident.
The actual
itself.
incident was
Right.
it created a lot of tension that day. Apologies were made. To my recollection, they were not forced, but apologies were made. And then time has the wonderful effect of cooling things down.
Sure.
And people changing, growing, maturing, reflecting on previous mistakes they may have made. And it was my understanding that was long since water under the bridge for the two of them.
Understood.
When you're writing a book, your editor says, I need all your stories. And you put lots of stories in there. And then you send out reader copies. And there's no accounting for what members of the press who read those reader copies are going to latch onto and want to, print ahead of the publication of the book or the release of the book. So I think it was just a matter of this was a story that they thought would read well online because James Franco, in the previous 19 years since then, has become rather famous and well known.
Well, especially after the end of stuff that had happened with this past award season,
Yeah,
and probably capitalizing on it.
So I was a little surprised at how it was sort of covered in the media for the 72-hour span it was covered.
Right.
But it's once again already in the rearview mirror.
It is. And the only reason I asked you about it too is I remember when it during that 72 hours that clip was going up from years ago, and there you were. So I was like, and I said to myself, if I have him on the show, I got to at least ask him about it.
The people in the media actually reached out to me through my publicist when that story was a thing for 3 days, and I was just like, this is not a story anymore.
Right. Yeah.
This was a story 19 years ago, and then it was a story that Busy and James and everyone has told multiple times on stage, on camera, asked and answered.
Right.
Like, it's a story that's now in a book, but it's not a news story. This is not breaking information.
Right.
So
all right,
all of it's out there.
Well, and do you still keep in touch with a lot of those cats from that show?
I mean, to varying degrees. I see John Daly a lot. Yeah. We've remained really, really close over the years. I see the other guys here and there. But it's a strange thing to think about. Like, think about a job, that you worked maybe like a summer job you worked when you were 17, 18 years old for like maybe 1 or 2 summers. It's like, do you still keep in touch with those
No,
guys?
I hardly talked to anybody when I was from
Exactly.
17. Some friends,
So,
again, maybe through Facebook.
Yeah.
Right,
so
right.
it's one of those things where, it would be great if we all had, like I always like to joke, well, we have regular Sunday brunches at Paul's house, but other than that, it would be lovely to see them more often, but there's to my knowledge, we're all on great terms with each other.
Yeah, and but what about same goes with Apatow and Feig, or you have more of a? Because I think you had more of a relationship with Apatow.
I don't know. I think I have an equal relationship with them both. Okay. Like we talk and we email, and I see them, here and there.
Is he doing television anymore? You think? Or
who, Judd?
Yeah, I know he's doing a lot of the HBO shows and.
Yeah, I think he's doing more TV. Yeah, he's one of those guys who never slows down.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want to see you in another Apatow show.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm not going to fight you.
I'm like my mother when I always make this joke when I first going out to LA. She's like, make sure you find Sandra Bullock. Mm-hmm. Find Sandra Bullock because you guys will get along. I'm like, I'm just going to show up like some lunatic at Sandra Bullock's house.
You know what you should do? You should go on that Johnny Carson show.
Right.
People get famous from that all the time.
Right. Yeah. But when we go back to Freaks and Geeks for a second or two, because it's a hell of a show that you're doing. Now, still to this day, people love it.
Yeah.
And it's a different time back then to where, listen, today that show comes out and you're on for a lot of seasons because you're talking about streaming. Come on, streaming the services, and that show finds a home. That show finds a home
probably
for a bit. This is your first gig. It's your first big gig. You're meeting, these people. Who's like your friend for that show? Because when, like you said, summer camp, it really is. Anytime you do a gig like that, whether it's a movie, it becomes a summer camp thing.
Yeah.
Who are the ones that you find yourself hanging out with the most?
Marty Starr and I were pretty close when we were shooting that show. We saw everybody every day.
Yeah. But there's a different though too. Like you're talking about high school. Like you see everybody every day, but there's some people you don't want to spend time with. There's some people just like, we work together, and then like you said, I'm going to go hang out with Marty and
Marty and I would hang out after work a lot. We go bowling.
Yeah. So funny. 16, 17-year-old kid, you're bowling and telling Monty Python jokes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You're a 60-year-old man. You know that.
I've always been. And then it was a little strange because John was 14. And Martin and I were 17. And those are three pretty critical years. Yeah. We both had licenses. We both had cars. Yeah. He had his folks, John. So we didn't quite start hanging out socially, me and John, until maybe a year, 2 years after the show ended. Maybe by like 2001 was when John and I started hanging out. Like I'd pick him up.
Yeah,
we'd go to a movie, get some sushi or something.
Right. Well, what's the adjustment period like though? Too for two questions here. First is first gig, moved to LA.
Yeah.
To shoot. What's that like? And does your mom come out with you? Does the family move? What
yes,
happens?
My mother moved out with me because I was just 17.
Yeah.
And so that was great. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
I'd say,
and your dad and your brother stayed.
Well,
back?
Yeah, they stayed back there because my father's a dentist. He had a practice.
How'd that work with your parents?
It had to be done.
Right.
They made it work.
Wow, that's awesome.
My father.
It's not easy to do, man.
My father and brother flew out and visited when they could. My mother and I flew back home when we could. Yeah. But they'd been married at that point 25 years.
There's two sides to it. It's the one of like, what am I going to do without my wife? We're like, I can take a break.
Yeah.
I get it.
They'd been married, but I can assure you it was a much bigger adjustment for my father than it was my mother.
Right.
My mother was very little change. Very little change for my mother. My mother has always been, the keeper of the home.
Right.
And the provider of the food and meals. It was old-fashioned, and so for her, it was just instead of making food from the whole family, now she's just making food for me and her. Yeah, my father, on the other hand, now he was like, I got to start fucking cooking again?
Right. Well,
I haven't done this shit in 30 years.
That's got to be an adjustment for your brother then, because how long is that? What's the entire period? 2 years that you said?
1 year.
1 year, but that's a year. And your brother at that point is like 19 years old. Is he out of the house at that point, or is he?
No, he was still living at home.
So if he's still at home, and now he's not got your mom there. It's just your dad. He must have been running wild.
He's not the running wild type.
No, he's not? All right.
Nah, they made it work.
Okay, good.
My brother and father made it work.
That's fun. That sounds like a sitcom all in itself.
It absolutely was.
I'm sure it was.
That would have been a reality TV show for the ages.
You and your mom out there now, okay, and so what's that like though too? So you live in an apartment with your mom, and because that's a big adjustment for her. She doesn't know anybody out here, or gets to.
But actually, I take it back. She did have a cousin who lived here. Yeah,
did she hang out with her cousin?
Yes, she did.
Okay, well there you go.
And then she hung out with Sandy Rogan, Seth's mom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So then, is your mom one of those people she just can meet anybody and talk to people pretty well?
Yeah, she's a very a chatty gal. Amiable.
Yeah, that's like you.
Yeah. I don't have the scariest thing to a lot of people is like, I'm going to go to a place and I don't know anyone.
Yeah,
that has never fazed me.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like that.
Yeah, I'm like, if I go somewhere and I don't know anyone, either I'll make new friends or I will keep to myself and be perfectly fine.
Right. You'll know. You're like, I can talk to these people. I don't want to talk to any of these
people.
Right.
I can either make new friends or avoid everyone and be perfectly comfortable either way.
I'm the same way, but I've also found being in this space that there are a lot of people that are not that way. And a lot of recluses.
No, we are the outliers.
We really are.
Yeah.
And we really are. But all right, so then as this whole journey is happening, you're shooting the show. You got to feel like you got something really special in this show.
I mean, I knew it was good.
Yeah.
I just knew we were making something I'd want to watch, and I felt like it was better than most crap on TV.
Right.
Beyond that, I didn't think like, oh, we're going to be the biggest show on. I never thought like that.
No, it just felt like a good show, though.
I felt like we were making something quality.
And that was NBC?
NBC. WNBC.
Yeah, WNBC. So that show, it comes out, and are you back East Coast when it comes out, or are you still?
No,
still here
I was here.
You're here, okay? And you stayed here for the second after you got the show. You stayed.
Because I stayed here because when the show aired, we were still shooting it,
right?
And then when the show ended, we were canceled in March of 2000.
Was it a big shock?
No. Because the network bailed on the show before we fucking started airing.
So you knew it was coming, and you started looking for. Okay, what am I going to do next? I got to start looking for the next thing.
Yes. So for me, the minute I turned 18, March of 2000, I sent my mother back to New Jersey.
How did that conversation go?
Mom, I'm an adult legally. Take care.
And she was like, "Okay, I'm out."
Yes.
Really?
She had a life to get back to there.
Right. So she was looking for that conversation.
She had another child who, needed a mother also.
Right.
And then
her husband.
Yeah, and her husband.
Right.
Yeah, and my brother too.
Right.
And then beyond that, she knew that I was a very capable young person.
Yeah. So you have the apartment by yourself then?
Yes, but not for long. I moved out of that apartment about a month later.
You find a roommate or something?
No.
Oh,
I just found a better apartment.
Better apartment. So you go out, and so you get your place, and then you just hit the ground running, and you start looking for gigs.
Yeah. So the deal I made with myself was, all right, the show's canceled. Well, actually, right after the show got canceled, before the show was canceled, right after we stopped shooting, I panicked and I was like, I need another job, any job. And a friend of mine was the head writer for a game show on the USA Network called Strip Poker.
Okay.
And he knew I was a stand-up and I could write jokes, and I was a trivia fan, so I could write goofy-sounding trivia questions. And so he said, we need writers on the show. I don't suppose that's something you want to do. I was like, yeah, I'll do anything.
Right.
So then I sent him a couple of samples of, jokey questions. He was like, yeah, these are great. You want the gig, it's yours.
18, 19 years old?
18. Just 18.
Just 18.
I mean, this was days after my 18th birthday. So I started writing jokey questions for the game show Strip Poker on USA.
Okay.
I held that job for 2 months to May, and then in May, I booked a pilot.
Which pilot was that?
It was a pilot that did not make it to the air.
Okay. Anybody good in it?
Michael McKean.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So we did that. The show did not get picked up. I had abandoned the writing gigs. I couldn't get back there. They filled the spot. So then I had nothing. I had no job of any kind. And I said, okay, here's the plan. I will stay in L.A. because I feel like this is where I belong. Mm-hmm. I'm supposed to be here. This is where the work is. I loved L.A.
Okay.
And so I said to myself, all right, self, you get 6 months. if you go 6 months of pounding the pavement, I had a good agent, I had a good manager. I was like, if I can get work of any kind, whether it be a writing job or an acting job, within the next 6 months, I stay and keep it this.
Right.
If I don't get any job at all within 6 months, the plan was still to stay, but I was going to enroll in college locally.
Got it.
And so every time, I said the clock starts now. And then I booked a job, I think, a month after that. And then as soon as that job ended, the clock reset. And I said 6 months. And so every time I worked, the clock started again. And in, knock on fake wood, in 19 years, I've never gone 6 months.
And I think that's also from the way that you're able, because this is the thing that people don't realize about acting. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, from the friends that I have who are actors, it's not just about your talent.
Oh my God, no!
You really have to. I mean, you've got to be able to do certain things. That skill that we both said that we have, to where you can walk into a room and talk to people. That is an asset that you have to use. I have certainly used that for this career, and you have certainly used that for your career, because you got to be able to call the right people. You got to be able to, like you said, even to find out where the next gig is, the conversations that you have with your manager or agent, certain things that you need to say.
Conversations you have on set with the people running that set while you're working on it. That has led to probably the bulk of my jobs.
Build.
You build that relationship. You ask them what they're working on next.
Right.
What else are you working on? Oh, I'd love to read that. Send me the script.
Yeah.
And then you parlay that, and then it's like, hey, this role was great. I know it's a smaller role, but I'll save you the trouble of casting it.
And
I'm around.
But even that little thing, that also comes from being able. Let's say that you find someone on set that also loves the Cubs.
Sure.
And it happens to you guys, and it's because you're legitimately talking about your love for the Cubs, and then it turns into, hey, by the way, like, what are you working on? Not just of like, I'm trying to get myself a new job. It's because I legit want to know what you're working on.
Yeah.
And I can get a job.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize, that it's not just about. Samm Levine's so good, he walked into a room, he got the job. He's like, no, you got to. That's part of it.
Yeah, I don't know,
but it's networking.
It's so much about now. It's so much about, and I hate to use the phrase, but the hustle. Yeah. You just have to be on all the time.
Yeah.
If you're just sitting around waiting for it to show up at your door,
doesn't matter how talented
you're gonna lose.
No, man. I mean, same thing. Even you look at people like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods had to make moves, even though, look at the way with his dad and the way that's taught him with golf. But it's those conversations that he had to eventually get himself into those positions, right? Yeah. It's like, it wasn't just a matter of like, well, that kid's really talented, sure, but what were the conversations that led? The conversations leading to that point. Those are the most crucial to it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to butcher this phrase. I'm truly going to butcher it. I apologize in advance. I believe they say luck is what happens when opportunity meets preparation.
Right.
So that's how I feel. Like, you can do everything you can to get yourself in the room.
Yeah.
But unless you've done all the other necessary steps ahead of time, you're just another schmuck in that room reading the same lines off the same page as everyone else.
Well, that's why, I mean, we covered in depth the Inglourious Basterds, the journey with Tarantino, but the abridged version of that. So for people who have not, you can go back and listen to the Schmoedown episode with Sam. It's from like 2011 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But let's get the abridged version of that.
The abridged version was...
How'd you get in that room?
I have been a huge fan of Quentin's. As long as I've known he's existed, which is a long time. And when in 2003, he was a guest on the then brand new show, Jimmy Kimmel Live.
And you're buddies with Kimmel, right?
And I'm friendly with Kimmel. And so through that friendship, I had access to the green room and backstage. So when I knew that Quentin was going to be on his show, I had heard from Judd that Quentin was a Freaks and Geeks fan. So I thought, well, I'm not going to let the opportunity pass me by. He is my favorite filmmaker. So I want to meet this guy. Even if it's just to say hello and tell him how much I like him, I know, at least I think, I'll have an in. He's at least seen some of my work. So I got on the backstage list. I went backstage, and when I saw Quentin walking across the green room, I was like, hey, man, Samm Levine from Freaks and Geeks. I know Judd is a buddy. And he warmed right, oh, yeah, what's going on, man? I love the show. Let's talk. And so
Just like that.
Just like that. So he finished doing the stuff on stage with Kimmel, and then afterward, I spent 90 minutes just chatting with him about anything and everything.
Yeah.
We just hit it off right away.
And you showed a lot of your, you know that, and again, that's because you are a student, and
Yes.
and you know there's because, and also it's not a facade by any means. You legit are passionate about film, so I'm sure that the conversation of film was a heavy portion.
I
of that.
mean, we talked about it for 90 minutes. We could have talked about it for 90 days.
Right.
Like there's no end of the conversation with him.
Right.
So we hit it off. It was terrific. And then it took 5 years for our paths to cross again. And it's when I found out that he was having general meetings to cast the roles of all the bastards.
Right.
He was specifically looking for young Jewish actors who had comedic sensibilities. And I went, well, he might as well have knocked on my door personally.
Right.
Honest to God.
You get in the room, he remembers you right away from the conversation.
So I told my manager, I was like, do whatever you have to do. Please don't screw this up. I need to be in that room. And when they called casting was like, oh yeah, no, Sam's on our list. We just hadn't gotten to him yet. So I went back in to meet with him, and instead of starting from square one right there, when I walked in, because he has a memory like a goddamn elephant, it was like, hey buddy, oh, long time no see. How you doing? How you been?
Yeah.
So we picked up right where we left off from 5 years earlier.
And you got to walk in that room hoping that's going to happen. It does,
of course.
And then you leave it, and you're like, okay, you got to be feeling good.
I felt great, you know. And then that wasn't even the audition; that was just to shoot the shit.
Right.
And
He likes to do that though, because I remember I've talked about this on the air because Katie Sackhoff it was between her and Arquette for the final, what was it, the Hateful Eight, and I remember she just said, I just went to his place and I was just talking to him the whole time. She felt the same thing. It was like that vibe because he makes you feel so good.
He does.
And he talks. So, I mean, I think, and I don't know, you'd have to ask him why she didn't get it, but it's like it was, you never know.
He is a whimsical man.
Yeah.
When it comes to making those decisions, it's just he will throw a leaf in the air and see where it lands.
Yeah.
Kind of thing sometimes with him.
And you see all the stuff, with him. He's kind of an eccentric dude, and he's this character from the conversations we've had, and even on the air, that's proved true. Watching him do his thing, did you have a higher respect, a different perspective after working with him, or what was the overall thought from when you went in to when you left?
Honest to God, they say don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
He is everything on set I assumed he would be.
Right.
Passionate. Fiery if he needs to be, if the situation calls for it. Intense. I don't use the word genius often because it is an overused word in our business and society. So it loses its meaning. So I use it very sparingly. Quentin is a genius when it comes to making films and telling stories.
Well, that's why there's I think a handful of directors that are stars, right? Like when you go to see a movie, you go because it's a Spielberg movie, because it's a Nolan movie, because it's a Tarantino movie, Scorsese. There are stars, and because those people are, like you say, geniuses, and that's why.
And because the end product always supports the thinking of like he's never even made an okay movie.
I know.
Like they're all great movies
for every genre. Because I'm not a big like Grindhouse.
Sure, but it's a genre movie.
For what it was, it's perfect.
It was perfect.
Absolutely. It's just not for me. Yeah. But anyway, since that. And again, the reason why I fly over the Inglourious Basterds stuff is we've covered it for so long, at length. And I recommend going back and listen to it because he tells some fascinating stories about the process of it. But afterwards, do we see him? Do we talk to him? Have you talked to him since? Or
the last time it's been a few years. But I definitely saw him a whole bunch in the years afterward. Okay. And I'm happy to say we, to my knowledge, have a great relationship. Great. Like every time I see him, it's a love fest.
Yeah. So like you said, you through this time since Freaks and Geeks, you don't go 6 months without working. You've been working. You just did a thing with Rob Riggle recently. Yeah. Bobcat Goldthwait. You have so much stuff that's going on. You're always working. But the other thing I found, the way that we found each other, is that the broadcasting, being on the mic, and when do you? Because that's really how I knew you at first. I didn't remember you obviously from being on Freaks and Geeks and stuff. But when I heard about you, it's like, Doug Benson does this show with Samm Levine. Yeah, I know Samm Levine. It's like, we want to do a show with Doug and Sam, absolutely. And it also tying in your love for movies. How does the relationship start with Doug Benson? Where does that come from?
That's a good question. I probably met Doug through Paul F. Tompkins.
Oh, okay. Who you met? How?
I met Paul. The first time I met Paul was January 6th, 2000. We were both
Scott Mance, ladies and gentlemen.
We were both guests on the same episode of Late Night with Conan O'Brien.
Oh, okay.
That was the first time I met him. Second time I saw
that interview with you.
I'm so sorry. It can't all be winners, folks.
I like that one.
That's please. I was so green. But the second time I saw Paul was probably a year later. I think I saw Paul at the first table read of Anchorman in 2001.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so then Paul started doing had a show at the Old Largo called the Paul F. Tompkins Show. Probably a year or so after that, and I used to go and watch it every month. And my guess is either Doug was a guest there or came to see an episode, because I feel like that's how I met him. I either met Doug through Paul or maybe Sarah Silverman had a poker game, and maybe Doug played in the game. I honestly couldn't tell you the very first time I met Doug, and I would be willing to bet my life he certainly couldn't either.
No.
But
I don't think he remembers his last show.
yeah, but then he started doing his own podcast, Doug Loves Movies, around 2004 or 5.
Oh, wow.
I think.
I didn't realize he started so early.
Oh, yeah. He's been doing a long time.
Because I met him during the way I met him was during Corolla.
Okay.
Because Mark and I were regular guests on Corolla.
Yeah.
And then there was one week where Corolla couldn't. Just to put it in perspective, we just hit 300,000. We're almost at 300,000 for Schmoes, right? At the time, we were at 4,000 subscribers, right? Yeah. And Doug Benson was the host because Adam was out for this. So it was me, myself, Eliza Schlesinger, and Mark. And I remember after that show, he's like, you guys talk movies. You should come do my show. And that's how we met. But so when do you know that you kind of hit it off with him though? From
So what happened was I used to go to his Tuesday night live tapings of Doug Loves Movies at UCB Theater.
Oh, it didn't start with you then. I thought that.
No.
Oh, I thought Doug Loves
No,
Movies
I started showing up, basically telling Doug, "You need to have me on this show." I love movies. I can hang, man. Yeah. Like I think it'd be a good fit. And it took over a year.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the format of the show back then used to be very different. Yeah. It used to be one, maybe two guests. It was usually just one guest. And it was Doug. And then at the end of it, the way they played the Leonard Maltin game was very different. It was a version that he used to play with Sarah Silverman and Brian Posehn, where they would literally hand off the old Leonard Maltin movie guide, and they would just randomly find a movie listing in there, and they go, all right, it's a drama from 88, and there's 9 names. I'm going to start from the bottom. You just shout out when you got it.
Right.
And then they would just start reading from the bottom up, and then it was on the other person to shout out the name of the movie once they got it, and whoever did it, in the fewest amount of names won.
Right.
And then if it was just 2 people, then you just, bam, now you get the book, and you quiz me.
Yeah.
And so that was how they used to do it back then. And so I felt like I'd be pretty good at that. Yeah. I know my character actors.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I think the very first time I was on his show was 2007.
Okay.
Because we were talking about the Oscars. And Dreamgirls, Jennifer Hudson was nominated, and I still look. I'm not attacking her as a person. She's a great person. She's an amazing singer. The fact that they gave her an Oscar for that, it hurts me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Who was she
sorry.
up against? Do you remember?
No.
Okay.
But
whoever it was better.
It's not that they were better. It's that she's an amazing singer.
Yeah.
And if you want to reward her for singing, give her all the awards.
Right.
Give her all the Grammys.
Right.
Please, I will not stop you from awarding her and her singing ability.
Right.
She is a perfectly adequate actor at best.
Right.
And they gave her an Academy Award for singing.
Right.
So those are acting awards, not singing awards. So I remember I was very passionate about that at the time.
Right.
And when Doug had me on, the Oscar noms, had come out, and so it was all we were going to talk about that. So I specifically remember we talked about that. I also remember I was so sick. like so criminally sick.
Yeah.
And I was looking forward to appearing on his show, and I knew if I canceled and said I can't do it, man, I'm under the weather.
That was it.
I thought I might never get invited back.
Right.
So I went on sick as a dog. There is a picture that somebody took of me asleep on the couch in the green room of his show 10 minutes before I went out.
Oh, funny.
Because I couldn't keep my head up straight.
And you just brought it, though, when it came to the show.
You know, I mean, like you do when you're a stand-up.
Sure.
Doesn't matter how you're feeling. The minute they announce your name and you walk on the stage, the
in.
adrenaline kicks in and you feel fine.
Right.
So that's how it went.
And then you guys you have a pretty good relationship and everything is set. But what about the Kevin Pollak relationship? 'Cause that's the other way that I kind of knew of you too. And because the funny thing with you and Kevin Pollak is, when I had the pleasure of doing a radio show with Kevin Pollak, and this is the same station KLOS that I do, and he was showing me how to do a Jason Statham impression. And he said, it doesn't matter what you say beforehand. All you got to say is, know what I mean at the end. So it doesn't matter how it sounds in the beginning, because all you got to say is, I got that Kenny, no mate.
Right, and you make it one word.
That's all it is. And he's known for his incredible impressions.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is with you guys is that you've been doing so much stuff with him. I don't know if it's always, but you sound like each other.
Yeah.
In the way that you have in your voices. And did you feel like this was someone that you were related to that you met later on in life?
I often refer to Kevin as my brother from another mother.
It makes sense.
We first met in October of 2000 in New York at the Friars Club roast of Rob Reiner. We were both on the dais. I was sitting directly behind him.
That's great. How did you get invited on that one?
I was the youngest friar.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So that's a story for another time.
That's so much more. I know. I can't.
Anyway, so we met there and then had a lovely chat. And then we don't speak for 8 years.
Okay. And
then 8 years later, the summer of 2008, I get a phone call from my manager who says, Kevin Pollak's trying to get in touch. I was like, great, give him my info. I'd be happy to talk to Kevin. Right. So Kevin reached out. We had the same age manager at the time. And at that time, Kevin had somebody over at Funny or Die told Kevin, anything you want to do, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Little goofy shorts or whatever. And so Kevin knew that Kevin had seen Freaks and Geeks and saw that I was doing Shatner and wanted to do a shot-for-shot parody of the trailer for the movie The Color of Money.
Okay.
But instead of pool and, trick shots, it was going to be him doing a Shatner movement or something and then me doing it.
Right.
Like the Newman-Cruise relationship. And so I was like, that sounds fucking great. I'm on board. Let's shoot this for Funny or Die. That sounds hysterical.
Yeah.
Let's have lunch and talk about it. And so we did. We had lunch, and we talked about it. We hit it off again immediately.
Yeah.
I went over to dinner at his place the next week. And, I mean, it was clear that we were kindred spirits.
Yeah, you can really tell because it's almost looked like he took you under his wing for a point. Yeah,
absolutely.
Because he's just because he's a legend in the world of stand-up comedy.
And so we truly became instant friends.
Yeah.
And then the joke of it was, no matter how hard we tried, in the year of our Lord 2008, you could not find the Color of Money trailer anywhere. Really? I purchased the different region versions of The Color of Money on DVD, hoping it was on one of them. Nowhere.
What is that? Did you find out what it was? Why?
No, just it wasn't available. You couldn't find it anywhere online, couldn't find it on any of the copies of the DVD. It just simply didn't exist.
Wow.
So that really put the kibosh on our plans. I, of course, was like, well, if we can't find it, that means no one can find it. We could do anything we want.
Right.
But we felt compelled, oddly, to make sure we were copying the original.
Right.
And so the idea just unfortunately never happened.
But
it was okay
there.
because the relationship that was born from that idea was far more important.
And you start doing a show with him?
That happened just under a year later.
Okay.
For the record, the Color Bunny trailer is now available online.
Everything's available now.
Exactly, now. But at the time, could not find it.
Right.
So you don't have to send it to me now. Thank you. But
too late.
Yeah, it's too late. It's done. So then in March of 2009, he, through his friend Jason Kalkanis, who at the time was running a company called Mahalo.
I did
remember
shows from Mahalo.
So they had this weekend. Remember
Yeah, I
all
do.
those?
Yeah. It's out in Santa Monica.
Yep, down in Colorado, in Santa Monica. Yep. So Jason had this studio space and basically was showing it to Kevin and went, so when you start doing your show, anything you want, we'll do it. And so born out of that was Kevin launching Kevin Pollak's Chat Show.
Yeah.
And he asked me and LeVar Burton to be the guests on his very first show.
Okay.
And
no, you're not co-host yet. Just
just a guest.
Got it.
Yeah. The reason he asked me and LeVar Burton was he knew we'd both say yes. And he was good friends with both of us enough that if the thing turned out to be a complete and total disaster, he wouldn't have egg on his face with someone like, say, a Matthew Perry.
Right.
Or a Rob Reiner.
Right.
Which I absolutely respect and admire that decision, because now that I have had to host the Chat Show, guest host in his stead, the first few times I did it, I was like, I don't want to bring in like somebody I don't want to fail in front of.
So let's bring the schmoes on.
Yeah, you guys were like my 28th guests, by the way. No, I was at that point I was so comfortable with the job. Right. But yeah. So anyway, I was a guest on the first show, and then it was clear to me that the show needed all the help it could get at that stage. Like he was sitting on the wrong side of the desk. He couldn't see the clock. He couldn't see notes from the control room. Like he didn't know. He was just trying to have a great conversation with guests.
Right. And your producer light goes off.
And my producer light, I was like, oh my God, this guy needs help. So I just kept, he was a buddy. So I was like, I'll just come back next Sunday.
Right.
And so I was standing off camera. I was writing things down on cards, holding them up near the camera so we could see them. How many minutes he had left in the segment.
Right.
You know, if there was a story that he said to me, I want to get to this, remind me if I don't get to this in time.
Right.
I would just hold up a card saying, get to the story now. And so from that came me sitting and somebody saying, you should have a camera on you. You should have a microphone on you. Just because if Kevin needs to take a moment, which occasionally he would take a moment to look at his notes or whatever. In my producer head, I was like, I'm thinking like someone who's just listening to this.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than that dead air gap. So I was like, if Kevin needs a moment to look at his notes, or if the guest says, oh, and then because we were streaming these live.
Yeah.
And so if the guest was like, oh, and then what was the name of that director who I work with on that thing? Like, I didn't want to leave the guest hanging. We were in the era of iPhones.
Right.
I would look it up because I don't expect Kevin to look it up.
Right.
I would look it up on my phone and go, oh, it was this person. It was Mike White or whoever. And then I'm not going to, sit there, Sarah, Kevin, it was Mike White.
Chime in and become a character.
I would just shout it out because, who cares? It was a casual show.
He's a radio guy though too,
right.
So he understood that and he gets that. That's part of the show. That's a producer.
And so so it became part of the show. Kevin liked that it became part of the show. We used to do goofy games. Who tweeted and 6 degrees of Kevin Pollak. And he would say he could connect. He says Kevin Bacon he needs 6. No, that's lazy. I could do anyone in 3. So I would have to sit there. If Kevin couldn't come up with it, I would have to sit there and solve any connection for Kevin in 3.
Got it.
So it just became sort of like that. And like I said, then I got the microphone. Then I got my own dedicated camera, and we started calling it the Samm Cam. And then as the show went on, it just became more of a sidekicky vibe.
Well, and so with both those shows, with both the Kevin Pollak Chat Show and then with Doug Loves Movies, the amount of guests that come in and out of both of those shows are incredible.
Oh, my God, yeah.
So similar to what we were talking about before, when you're on set and you're talking to people in environment, have jobs ever come out of those shows?
That's a great question. I don't know that I can say for sure a job has. However, we had Larry David on the show. It is one of my all-time favorite interviews.
Yeah.
Just before we had Larry David on the show, Kevin and I were up in Utah at a charity event, and Larry was there. And we had the pleasure of being in the same car that Larry was in on our way from Park City back to the airport in Salt Lake City. And so Kevin, kind of knew Larry, but for whatever it was, Kevin was like, come to breakfast Larry and I are having breakfast. You should be there. Right. So the three of us had breakfast at the hotel, and then
Are you geeking out?
oh my god,
Yeah.
You know, I'm holding together though.
But inside.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then the three of us rode for the hour drive from Park City to Salt Lake City. So between breakfast
That's great.
and then riding to the airport and then waiting for our delayed flights at the airport, we had like 3 hours alone with Larry, just the two of us. So that was really great.
Yeah.
And then we had him on the chat show a couple weeks later. And I think getting to hang with him at the chat show, you know, plus the stuff in Utah was tremendously helpful because then, like 4 months later, I get an email from him that just says, Sam, it's Larry. Here's my number. Call me.
That's great.
Like, okay. So I call Larry and he tells me that he wrote a play and he wants to do a reading of it at his office.
Right.
And he says, I want you to come in and I want you to read these 2 roles. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. He goes, so, okay, great. And then he calls me again and he sends me the script. I read it. It's amazing. And he calls me again the next day. He's like, listen, Rob Reiner is going to be playing an older version of the same character that you're doing. I need you guys to talk on the phone to try to get the voice similar. So can I give Rob your number? Like, yes.
Right.
You can give Rob Reiner my number if he'd like to talk.
Did Rob remind you remember you from the roast?
I mean, I reminded him that I was there.
Right.
I don't know that he remembered meeting me. I think we'd already had him on the chat show at that point, so he remembered me, I think, more through that. Okay. So anyway, so then I'm chatting with Rob Reiner, and then I have to text Larry. Yes, I spoke to Rob. We're on the same page. It's all good. Okay, great. So then I go in, and the script we were reading was Fish in the Dark, which became a Broadway show. Okay. Like a year and a half later.
Oh, I see.
But this was the very first table read.
Yeah.
And the people he got into that room for him, Ava Mendes, Ted Danson, Susie Essman, Rob Reiner, God, who else was in there?
Larry David. When Larry David...
Mary Steenburgen.
Yeah, who's saying no to Larry David?
Yeah.
Right.
Wendy Malick. Everybody said yes.
Right.
It was a great
That's cool.
room. It was an amazing room.
Yes.
And I have to believe 80% of the reason I'm there was because he remembered me from the chat show.
I'm going to give you probably 90% of it.
So...
And ride in the car with you and stuff too.
Yeah. So I don't know that I have gotten a job proper. Right. Oh, for the record, the reason I was not in the show was the 2 roles that I was reading were great, but I was actually not correct for either of them.
Right.
One of them was a guy who was about 10 years younger than me. The other was a guy who was at least 15 years younger than me.
I see. Oh, well, look at that. So, I mean, again, you and I could probably speak for 4 hours and chronicle everything that you've done and learn more stories about you. But from the acting, we're ready. If you don't understand why Sam is as successful as he is because exactly that story that you just told and the relationships that you make, and I think that it should be inspiring to people because it is. It's the same thing that I certainly use it for this particular thing, and my journey is very different from yours, but very similar at the same time. Mm-hmm. And when you got to make those conversations, you got to cherish moments like you just said there too. But I do, and I would be remiss if I don't bring up the Schmoedown.
I was wondering if we'd ever get to it.
Well, we get to it at the end because I'm gonna close out here too because we are closing out to the end of the season. We're about to get to the singles tournament is about to begin very soon, and something that last year you did something. This is the thing with Sam is that I knew you would be good and. I remember thinking because you know how much I think about this thing.
Yes, I do.
And I can't shut my brain off from it. And I think I may or may not have told you this, but like when all the people and prospects that I have that are coming in, I test out my announcing voice with announcing them as champion down the line. Yeah. And this is before you had your first match, and I remember saying. And we were going to call you the Inglourious one. I said, and the new movie trivia Schmoedown champion of the world, the Inglourious. It's got a good ring to it. I was like, and it'll probably happen soon. Didn't happen right away.
Nope.
And I remember thinking, well, Sam's good. I think he's going to be a mid-level guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's personality-wise, always be there. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason why that was because, and you've said this many times to me, that when you first came in, you're like, I want to play some fun movie trivia, and you didn't really start taking it serious.
It's not that I didn't take it serious. It's that you can be great at hitting a bat and a ball.
Yeah.
Hit a ball with a bat. You can be great at shag and fly balls. That doesn't make you a great baseball player.
Right.
There's a lot more to the game than just those two skills.
Right.
Knowing movie trivia is one thing. Being good at the Schmoedown is a different beast.
Right.
And so when I came in first, I was just relying on my movie trivia knowledge to get me there.
Right.
It was when I became a student of the game you were playing here, the overall game. That's when I started to more hone in on what I thought I needed to do to be good at the Schmoedown and not just good at movie trivia.
Well, you found success and then some with it because we were talking about this today. With Ben Bateman. I said, I don't think there'll be anyone in this league. Because you know me, I want to run this league until I'm dead and buried. I want this thing to go on for a long time. I want it to become a sport, which I really believe it is.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know if we'll ever see what you accomplished because 35 competitors, granted, you had a later spot, but there's still things went your way, but you closed it out. You won the free-for-all. You got yourself that title shot. You played Merle, didn't go your way.
Nope.
And then you were 3 and 4 after that, and it's like, well, that might be, that's going to be hard to come back for. You win 7 straight games after that. You become 10 and 4. You defend the title twice. You win the team title. You defend the team title, and now many people now that shifted from it was the conversation for a very long time was Dan Merle's the greatest player of all time to Samm Levine is the greatest player of all time because you see it, you know that it's there,
sure,
because of what you just said. Because of the playing of the game. Trivia-wise, that can be debated. I think that Bibbiani...
I definitely don't know the most trivia.
I think Bibbiani could be discussed as the greatest trivia person out there. Drew McWeeny, trivia person. But the game aspect of it, you see these players that are starting to really play now, and the Ben Batemans, the Rachel Cushings, the Clark Wolves, the really Kalinowskis, Mara Kanopics, studying the game and how to play it. And you were one of the first to really dive into that, and you saw a lot of results out of that.
Yeah.
Did you expect to win both tournaments, win the championship against me, beat my head in, and then defend it twice, then win and beat the Patriots, which no one did?
Expect never. All my philosophy in any game I'm playing and in life is as long as I know I did everything I could do to achieve success, whether or not success happens, I sleep well at night knowing I didn't miss anything.
Right.
So I did all the studying I could. I prepped as best I could. I watched 100 matches, old matches, figuring out where strategy could be applied. And I felt very confident that whether or not I won a match, I had played properly.
Right.
And I felt like much like sabermetrics, if you apply that formula over a wide enough amount of games, you will win more than you lose.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I was trying to play the game, was just to do everything as right as I could, and hopefully the results would come. And when I went on that run, I felt like that's it, man. I'm in the zone. I feel great about this. I feel like, to me, the goal that I set out to accomplish here, I fucking did it. I wanted to win a championship. I wanted to win another one. I wanted to defend each championship one time to go, nope, not a fluke, earned it, and then proved that I earned it.
Right.
And once I was done with that, I mean, we had that whole thing. I was like...
It broke my heart.
I know, but I was like, I just... It's not that I don't love it, and I do love it. At that point, I felt like what I still had left to give to the game was behind the scenes stuff.
This is the thing though too, because and I told you this, my brother is a big critic of the decision.
That's fine,
right? But here's what I think a lot of people don't realize though too, because I've also had other people champions. What if I won and then retired? I said, like Samm Levine. I go, there's a very different thing here. Samm Levine won 7 straight matches. He played in 2 straight tournaments. He won 2 straight tournaments. There was tons of matches that he just kept playing. Then he wanted to do, and he's also a working actor, and it's hard because of the amount of studying. So I get it, I understand. It's like I will never give anyone if someone had won a championship and then decided to retire. I'm never giving anyone a special because I'd say you're not doing that because I'm not doing it. It was a different circumstance.
I still hate that you gave me one.
Well, it was a different circumstance. Yeah. And it was a different thing. But I just want we won't get into depth of it. Just I want to put you on the spot with certain questions here about the just if you can in your head.
Yeah.
Favorite match of all time that you've ever played in?
Oh, that I played in?
Yep.
Oh, that's easy. Riley.
Riley's your favorite match?
Yeah.
Of all time? Why is that?
I didn't win that match. I lost by 1 point.
Yeah.
But I felt like that was the most fun I ever had playing the game. Even though, again, I didn't win, I felt like Riley and I were so perfectly matched.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a perfect sparring partner for me. We have such an overlap of knowledge.
Yeah.
In a common overlap. And it was the perfect marriage of the work I'd put into learning the game and having fun playing it.
Right.
And, I respect him so much and I feel the same level of respect from him. And, I love that match. I always cite it as my favorite match I ever played in.
Hardest match you ever played?
Hardest match was probably my second singles defense against Clark. Yeah.
Sudden death.
Sudden death, man.
Yeah.
She's a beast. I can't. I mean, I love that she has the team belt, and it is strictly a matter of time before she has a singles belt.
You think she's got a shot in the singles tournament?
100%.
Yeah. All right, let's do that real quick before we go. We'll just do. We're gonna do a preview special down the line, but I'll get your predictions here. So you got on one side of the bracket, Mark Andreyko versus your former partner, Drew McWeeny. Mm-hmm. Who do you got?
I would never bet against the Godfather. You know that.
All right. Clark Wolf versus either Ben Bateman, Lon Harris, Josh McCouga, or Janine the Machine. That's the gauntlet right there. Who's coming out of that gauntlet?
Clark.
No. Clark's going to play one of those first.
She's playing
He's playing one of the gauntlet people first. So out of those four, who do you think is going to win the gauntlet? Ben, Lon, McCouga, or the Machine?
All right, it's I think it's either going to be Ben or Lon.
On the spot?
He's in the zone right now. I'll say Ben.
Ben. Clark versus Ben.
Clark.
All right, so then Clark versus McWeeny.
Oh no!
Gotta do it.
Sophie's choice.
You got to do Sophie's choice.
I don't want to. No, I can never.
You're going with the Godfather.
I have to say the
Godfather.
Godfather
Goes to the finals.
He's just the
All right. Other side of things. Other side. We got Dangerous Dan Murrell, Stacey Howard.
I mean, it's as we well know, anything's possible, but I got to go with Dan.
Okay. Someone who I know, like every other competitor, it just makes you shake when I say his name. Ethan Irwin versus the new kid, Chance Ellison.
I love Chance. He's great. He's a lot of fun to watch, but I'm gonna say Ethan.
Ethan. Okay, so then Ethan versus Dan.
Oh my God, that is like, you know what that reminds me of? That scene in Big Trouble in Little China when Lopan and Egg Shen have their little warrior guys fighting each other. Damn it! Wow. Fuck it, Merle.
All right, and then Merle. So you're going to say McWeeny then, Merle versus McWeeny.
Yeah. All
right, so you're saying McWeeny goes and plays Roker for the belt. Okay, my man. So look, there's so much more I want to do. I don't want to ruin that yet. There's so many announcements we have. The other thing is you're going to be doing you're going to be helping me out on the Schmoedown.
Yes. So I was not whistling Dixie because that's the kind of thing.
You have been helping me out.
Well, yeah, it's the kind of thing that I could do with my downtime that did not revolve around being available specific days when you had the studio and could shoot.
Right.
That was the other thing that, we didn't get into in the announcement, but I got really busy earlier this year and I felt like it was going to be problematic for me to keep committing to matches. That's one of the other reasons I stepped down. But I've been looking over questions because it's no secret. I would take issue, as a lot of other players have taken issue with the phrasing of some questions or the seeming level, not the equality between one question for a point value versus another question of the same point value. So I wanted to devote more energy to that, to making sure that at the end of every match, no matter the outcome, not a single competitor could go, well, that was just unfair.
Right.
I would love that.
Good luck.
I know, but that's my goal.
That's the goal, and I
goal.
love that you're doing it with me. All right, so last one before we go here too. We know that you're doing the exhibition match for the movie release.
Yeah, man, that's just fun.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
That's just icing for me.
And I think it'd also be fun to get, especially if you got your face on that slice. Ben would, I don't know what Ben would do himself. But
I don't know how he got it in the first place.
He challenged Mance. Mance shouldn't have taken the challenge.
No, he shouldn't have taken the challenge. It was just a regular match.
It was a regular match.
That's ridiculous.
But if there was one person that you could play, if you came out of retirement, if you could play, who would it be?
Oh, boy.
You only get one. You got one person that you could play. It could be someone you played before. It could be someone you never played. Who you got? Retirement match. You're out of retirement.
Doug Benson.
You'd play Benson.
Yeah.
You think Benson would be good?
Oh, I think he'd be very good.
Really?
Yeah.
I got to get him on.
You know why?
Why?
Doug loves movies.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the great Samm Levine, the former Movie Trivia Schmoedown team and singles champion, and my friend. So, guys, make sure you check out Samm at Samm Levine. 2 M's.
That's right.
2 M's. Samm Levine. And what else you got? What's cooking? Where can I find some of your other stuff?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The real answer is the thing that I'm working on right now that I'm in love with is my new job for DC Universe.
That's right.
DC Daily.
Shit, we didn't even talk about that.
That's all right. I'll come back.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
But yeah, that's it's for people who love DC Comics, the DC Universe. It's a new platform. And they have so much on there that they basically needed a daily show where we could highlight issues and episodes and movies.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've always been a nerd at heart. And so this is finally a chance to really talk about it every day, like the nerd stuff that I love and have always loved. So if you haven't checked it out yet, there are a lot of episodes that are available for free on YouTube. Just look for DC, DC Universe, DC Daily. And if you're a fan, subscribe to it. I think it's like $7 or $8 a month.
Yeah, it's $7.99. You know how I know that? Because you guys are a sponsor.
There you go. So yeah, you can get a free trial subscription. Check out all the stuff they have on there. I think it's really, really good. Titans is their new show.
Yes.
And I'm really enjoying it. If you're a comic book person, you could do a lot worse. Trust me, these guys are really putting a lot of love into this show, and it's fun to watch. So check that out, DC Daily, and I don't know where the hell else I am. Just follow me on Twitter.
Just do a search on Roku and put Samm Levine in. Something will come up. And you should come on Collider Live, and we'll talk more about the DC.
I would love to, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for being on, guys. Once again, make sure that you subscribe to this feed here. Leave a comment, leave a review, do all those nice things that you do when you like a show. And if you're watching on the podcast channel, same thing. Subscribe to the Collider Podcast channel, leave a comment, do the like stuff, and make sure you check out the Movie Trivia Schmoedown website. That's right, it is triviasd.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching or listening, whatever you're doing. That was it. That was the interview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're joining us for the first time on Collider Video, hit that subscribe button, like, comment, do all that stuff. And remember, this is also on iTunes. If you're listening to iTunes right now, pull over and then rate it. Subscribe it, do all that stuff. Hit pause on the treadmill for a second and let us know what you think about these shows, and we will continue to make more of them. You can find all your favorite shows from Collider on iTunes on the Collider Podcast Network. Thank you very much. See you next time.